Tri-City Sports Now. I'm Marky Billson on this Memorial Day, honoring my grandfather. I got his bow tie on here. He was at the Veterans Cemetery earlier today. First Memorial Day without him, but he lives on here through Tri-City Sports Now and living on in perpetuity. Sometimes it seems, as Jerry Bonkowski of NBCSports.com, the right rev of speed, or if you prefer, the right rev of rev, is Jerry Bonkowski, and covers all kinds of motorsports, but this year at NBCSports.com, and we will talk to him about the Coca-Cola 600 and the NASCAR scene as the Busch-Harvick rivalry gets yet another great chapter added to it. But before we get to that, it was a wonderful Indianapolis 500. There was a lot of action, a lot of late drama going on. Will Power wins it by taking the lead with 4 laps left. So, if you will pardon the question, but I think a lot of people want to know this, who is Will Power, Jerry Bonkowski?
Well, I think, Will Power's name speaks for itself if you're an IndyCar fan. I mean, he was probably, going into the race, he was one of the best IndyCar drivers there is. Or he is one of the best IndyCar drivers there is. He just never was able to check off that one big mark on his, the list of goals, and that was to win the Indy 500. So, he is. I read a stat yesterday. He's, I think, the second winningest active driver in the sport right now. He's got Dixon, or actually maybe tied with Dixon. Now I think about it. So, he's the second winningest tied for the winningest active driver in the sport. And, this was a win that was a long time coming in. There was a lot of drivers. Simon Pagenaud was the first one that kind of comes to mind. Sebastian Bourdais also comes to mind, of guys who, had passed the Indy 500 for so many years and came up short. And, again, they came up short this year. But one of the, Will Power's a good guy. He's one of the good guys in the sport, and really was a great story to see him finally win. I predicted before the race that it was going to be one of the best races we've seen in a long time, and I definitely think that we saw that for sure.
Well, you mentioned he's one of the winningest drivers, 34 victories in IndyCar. And for those of us, hillbillies here in East Tennessee, where racing means stock car racing and such, and we probably will watch the Indianapolis 500, excuse me, and then, but for open wheel racing after that, it's like, there's no bumping and grinding out there, that sort of thing. Then it does become sort of, okay, tell us a little bit about Will Power. Kind of exotic in that he's from Australia, likes Family Guy cartoons. There's something out there that some people may not know and such. But I'll tell you one thing that I found to be kind of interesting is that Chevrolet, and we mentioned this, there were 7 of the 9 cars on the pole, if you will. Some of the top starting 9 cars were all Chevys. Meanwhile, they continue to struggle in NASCAR. I'm curious about this. I mean, Chevy is not necessarily the make that I would think of for Indy. Nevertheless, Louis Chevrolet drove the Indianapolis 500. But can you tell us a little bit about how Chevrolet has really come on in Indy racing?
Well, Chevy has always been very big in IndyCar racing, but I think, Marky, the biggest takeaway you can have from Will Power winning yesterday in the Chevy is that, after last year's Indy 500, Chevrolet really doubled down on its commitment to the IndyCar world. They really did a lot more R&D. They did a lot more, funding, in terms of improving their motors. Not to say the motors are bad, but, when you see Hondas win the last 2 races, 2016 with Alexander Rossi and 2017 with Takuma Sato, there's bragging rights. And, Chevy takes those bragging rights very, very seriously. So, I think now that they won the Indy 500, I think it's about time they kind of double down and try to figure out what the heck's going on in NASCAR as well, too, because, they're having some struggles in the NASCAR world. The new Camaro body, while it's a success for the fans, teams are still struggling with the aerodynamics of it. So I think it's just a matter of time. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed this, I saw it on Twitter just a little while ago. Apparently, the Xfinity Series in NASCAR next year will have a new pony car, the Toyota You know, that probably by 2020, a year afterwards, we're going to have it in the Cup Series. And I used to own a Supra. I had one back in 1990 to 1995, I think it was. I'm sorry, no, 85 to 90 rather. And it was one of the best cars I've ever had. And I'm looking forward to them bringing that old brand back. And we're going to have a true pony car series, I think, by 2020 with the Mustangs for Ford, the Camaros for Chevy, and hopefully the Supras for Toyota in the Cup Series by 2020.
That's kind of, yeah, and I mean, it was a rear-wheel drive car. They made them until 2002. As I look here, it's being said, I can, as I go online, one of the first things that comes up is, this won't be a cheap car. Still, though, I got to tell you, when I hear about Toyota, and I know that this might be just a prejudice or so, but I just remember my aunt who sold her 67 Camaro convertible for $100 because it wasn't as reliable as a Toyota. And I'm like, that is the exact opposite car culture of what NASCAR is trying to promote. And I mean, I know it's has nothing to do, you might be able to say, but I still think a lot of people will think of the Toyota and say, Supra, what's that? Shouldn't that be a Celica? What's a Camry? What are they doing? Where's Dodge? I mean, there's still that going on in the back of my mind, although I do think that Liz is an attractive, or no, it's Jan. Jan is the spokesman. You know what I'm talking about here. Very attractive woman here. But by the way, speaking of attractive women, I will tell you, when I was watching Indianapolis 500, my interest waned a little bit when Danica Patrick crashed out. I believe it was lap 67. Her car, really, she did not have a very good car. It went out on her from the rear. She was complaining about its ability to steer, I know, and but she crashes out of the race. A disappointing way to end for Danica Patrick. I know we've always talked about this, but you're not necessarily sold that that was her last race. Is that correct?
Well, after the way she went out, I think I'm going to change my tune a little bit and say that is going to be her last race because, there was so much, excitement, so much attention, so much looking forward to what she was going to do, and then she goes out and, again, it wasn't her fault. The car just went around on her, and she just basically was left to go along for the ride. But, when it was her worst ever finish in the Indy 500, I mean, 30th, I think it was, or 31st, whatever it was, and she had only had, prior to yesterday, only one other Indy 500 of the first 7 she was in that she finished outside the top 10. Every other one was inside the top 10. So I think that had she had a better finish, I think that she potentially could be lured back. But I think that after what happened yesterday, I don't think she wants to put herself through that again. And I think that we basically have seen Danica Patrick's last race. She's got a lot of other things on her plate right now that she wants to go forward with. She's got a wine company. She's got a book that came out about a couple months ago. She's really trying to change her brand, and she's going to host the ESPYs in June or July rather. But then after that, she's going to kind of calm down, if you will, or recharge the batteries, and then move on to the next phase of her life.
Well, one of the things, though, as I complete this, do you think we could ever see the day where IndyCar becomes more popular than NASCAR again? And I ask that because, I'm doing my prep for this show, and I recalled that, it was the Indianapolis 500. Well, that was the first race that I watched, that sort of thing. That was what my attention was. I'm looking at the Wall Street Journal talking about how NASCAR lost 45% of their ratings since 2005. We can talk about the effect of the car of tomorrow, but it seems as if, and you've talked about this, sort of a renewal of interest in IndyCar. Do you think in 10 years that we might be talking about the Indianapolis 500 and the IndyCar series more than we are the NASCAR series, unless you do live in a place like Bristol, Tennessee?
Well, the best way I can answer that, Marky, is this. Back in the early 80s, when I was working with USA Today, when they started up in 1982, I was on the IndyCar beat from 84 through, I think it was 95, a few instances where I would go to NASCAR races just as a one-off here or one-off there to cover them. And other than one or two races, it's like you just I always wanted to go back to the IndyCar world, and I think the fans there were just many more fans of IndyCar at that time. That all started changing though in the early '90s when Jeff Gordon came into the popularity, and then he went up winning 4 championships within 7 years, I guess it was, and that's kind of where NASCAR really took a big foothold, if you will, and there was so much infighting in the IndyCar world between the kart series and then the startup Indy Racing League, and that thing went on for 12 years before they unified back in 2008. So to your point, I think that you're starting to see a resurgence of IndyCar already. I think you've been seeing it for the last couple of years, and I think that this is not any not self-serving, but I think that with the broadcast coming to NBC next year, we're going to have all the races, all 17 or 18, whatever, they're going to add a race or whatever. I think that's only going to enhance the the allure of the sport to the fans. And, NASCAR obviously is having some struggles right now. And, you say, well, will IndyCar, overtake NASCAR within 10 years? The way things are going now and the attention that the series is getting in this, and of course with NBC taking over the broadcasting for the next 3 years starting next year, I think that 10 years could be a lot sooner than 10 years, if you know what I'm saying.
It's interesting. Well, I mean, I will tell you that, yeah, some of that, when I'm watching this and I'm so used to watching NASCAR, I mean, it does take me a little, they're not banging fenders out there, that sort of thing. But at the same time, it was, you would go into a turn and you didn't know within, this is the difference of, say, IndyCar racing, there might be a turn, you didn't know which one of 5 cars was going to have the lead at the end of that turn. And, someone who doesn't watch a lot of Indy cars, now this is a little different than what I'm used to, that sort of thing. I am used to watching Kyle Busch win this year. I'm also used to watching Kevin Harvick win this year. Kevin Harvick, I guess, with an accident, although he had gone into the top 5 from the back of the race before he wrecked out in lap 67, but this was Kyle Busch's race all the way, pole winner, 600 laps, every stage. This was Busch's statement to very much say, you know what, Kevin Harvick may have the winning streaks, but I've got the points. I do want to ask you a question, though. What now in this era of playoff series racing, what does, being in first place in the points series really mean in these days? I mean, it's not you're in first place. It's not like you're the number 1 ranked team in college football the way it used to be, if you will. What does leading the circuit in points mean to you, Jerry Bonkowski, in this day and age?
Well, I mean, because of the playoff series in NASCAR, it's important to get a good start, to get as many wins, get as many playoff bonus points as you can. That certainly helps when you get into the 10-race playoffs. But, I think that, we've seen guys who dominated last year, like Mark Truex Jr. He dominated the season. He winds up winning the championship. Harvick did it when he won the championship a few years back. But, it's not a guarantee. I mean, if you're number 1 in the points right now, it doesn't mean you're going to be number 1 in the points after Homestead. I mean, there's a lot more racing coming up between now and then, and I think that, it certainly helps you with those extra bonus points, like I said, but, you have 1 or 2 bad races in the playoffs, all those bonus points kind of just fall away real quickly. So, it's a matter of getting into the playoffs as strongly as you can with as many bonus points as you can, with all the stage wins as you can, but, once the 10-race playoffs start, it could wind up being a lot more difficult task, and it will be a more difficult task, if you will, for guys that came in with a strong flourish. They may not necessarily end with a strong flourish, though.
Well, see, that's the thing. I mean, always number 1 in the points, but yeah, what does it mean? It's like being ranked number 1 in college basketball. I mean, how did that work out for Virginia this year? That sort of thing. I mean, yeah, it looks good, don't get me wrong, but, it doesn't have the weight that it once did. And to tell you the truth, I miss that. And I've often wondered, I mean, we talk about the demise of NASCAR or something, if maybe the fact that it's not every race means the same anymore if that isn't a problem, and certainly a reason why, let's say, there are Spartan crowds at some of the poor weather races during the circuit this year, including Bristol and Martinsville. But no, Busch did say, he dreamt of winning this race since he was a kid, being able to win this race. It's Charlotte. It's the longest race and all. His comments, I'll tell you, I remember once watching a highlight film of an old race in 1971, I guess, that Buddy Baker won in Darlington. And he said, this means everything to me because my dad won the track and blah, blah, blah. And it really was like a real big event at that time and, family. But this is, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't this like the last obstacle that Busch has had in his career, that this is the track that he needed to tame? What's next for Kyle Busch now that he's won this race?
Well, I mean, certainly another championship. I think that there's still a feeling out there that when he won the championship back in, 15, I think it was, that, he won it, but, or 16, I guess it was. Now my years are running together. You know how it is, but the point I'm making, though, is that, he won that championship essentially fair and square, but you have to remember, he missed the first, 11 or 12 races. He got injured in Daytona in the Xfinity race there, and then, came back and, won a couple of races, was able to be qualified for the playoffs, and then went on to win the championship. I think that, that was certainly an achievement in and of itself to come back from such a horrific injury and, the broken legs and all that, the broken foot, and then come back into to win a championship. But I think that there's a mindset among some NASCAR fans out there that, he did it, and there maybe might be an asterisk around next to his name because he didn't run the full 36 races. And I think that, back then, when this all was transpiring, there was some consideration and some comments by, a lot of fans and some drivers even that, should he be eligible because he missed that many races. So I think that Kyle Busch, wants to put to rest once and for all that he can win a championship on a full 36 race schedule. And I think that he's certainly well on his way to potentially doing that this year.
Well, we now go to, I guess, sort of the kind of a triangle track, if memory serves, but in Pocono coming up. And I just want to ask you, I know Pocono is kind of meant a little something to me because although it's in the eastern part of the state, it was a different kind of a racetrack in maybe even a different kind of a place. It's not that far from Dover, but then again, how far away is Bristol from, say, Martinsville, or Wilkesboro or someplace like that, that sort of thing. And I just wanted to ask, as we go to Pocono, what is that track? When I say that, Jerry Bonkowski, what does that bring to your mind, the Pocono track?
Well, I think Pocono is, it's almost like a cliche, but it's maybe a triangular track, but it races like a road course. I mean, you ask any driver in the Cup Series or the Xfinity Series, and they'll tell you the same thing, that, it's a 2.5-mile length, long track, which is the same length as the Indy 500 or Indianapolis Motor Speedway is. But, you have 3 turns instead of 4. Each turn is very unique in and of itself. You've got the tunnel turn where there's a big bump for drivers to go across, when they're going that, over that thing. And, this is a race that is very grueling on machines, on the drivers, on the teams. And if they have heat like they had in Indianapolis yesterday, if they have similar heat, it's going to be a long day for the NASCAR Cup Series. But I think that, if there's a race that I consider underrated, if you will, I think it would be the first Pocono race. Certainly, they have another race next month. But I've always said that the first Pocono race is a little bit underrated in terms of its value or what it means to the sport and things like that. It comes, traditionally right after the Indy 500, and I think we're still kind of riding an Indy 500 high at that point. But I think that any Cup driver, worth his weight in salt is going to want to win that race at Pocono because that is one of the bigger races to win. So I think that there's a lot on the line, there's a lot on the table, and I think that the drivers will be coming into that race. They're going to be glad that they got they're done with the Coca-Cola 600 because it was so long. But this race is not all that much shorter, if you will. Excuse me, if you will.
Yeah, I remember friends when I lived in PA, they get excited. Oh, I just won, tickets to go to Pocono and all this. And I don't know, you mentioned it runs like a road course and such. And that was always one of the things, like, it's just about as far from Pittsburgh down to Bristol or so, you get to see the whole race that way, what's the thing with Pocono and all that. I guess one of the things that I remember about Pocono is it's where J.D. McDuffie died, oh gosh, about 28 years ago or so. And that really did sort of turn me on to the dark side, if you will, of the sport. Yeah, I'm going to channel Darth Vader here or so. But no, it really did. And that really struck me a lot back in the day when he did pass away. Because although I, learned a lot about this veteran driver and all that, it did cause me to wonder. And I think maybe it did have a positive change in NASCAR where you're saying, this guy drove for years and years and years, never won a race, and, should he have been out on the track at the age of 50 against better funded teams, he wasn't going to win that race, and isn't it time now to sort of say to a guy like this, no, this is where a Chase Elliott should come in, or a Bubba Wallace, or one of the young guns, Bowman, Adam Bowman, or whoever. And I've always kind of felt that. I've talked to you a lot before about, I don't know if the future of NASCAR means that right now the young drivers have to win, because, I think it would be just as good for Jimmy Johnson to start winning races, to have an established brand. But that when that happened up at Pocono, and I've said this before, it taught me something about NASCAR racing. And again, it wasn't a real fun lesson either. But anyway, it's always fun to talk to you, Jerry, and I look forward to doing it again before this race, and we can talk a little bit, maybe more and more about the goings-on in Indy, since you say that's about ready to take over. I don't know, can we put Indy cars can we put Indy cars by any chance on a half-mile circuit? Or that's just a little ridiculous, huh?
I'd love to see that. I think a lot of fans would love to see that. I mean, the IndyCar at Bristol, man, that would be a sellout, in my opinion.
They had World of Outlaws there going 140 to 150 when they laid down the dirt. So, did we just create a monster? It's Tri-City Sports Now. I hope I did not.